here today with Julie Duffy of StoryADay. So Julie, thank you so much for being here today.
Well, thanks for having me. Well, the whole aim of StoryADay is to write a story a day, obviously. It started because I was starting stories and not finishing them. And I think there's something really powerful in finishing a story, not abandoning it halfway through. And I was so disgusted with myself for not doing that at a certain point that I decided I needed a big, scary challenge. So I decided this is what I was going to do, and I started talking about it, and people loved it and jumped on board, and then, which was great because it meant that I had to continue. And I started that in 2010, and I started it in May because it rhymed, StoryADay in May, and that's how it all started. So basically, people can come to the StoryADay website and sign up and get a username. We have forums there. We have I put out prompts every day that people can use or not. You're under no obligation to come and do it at the StoryADay site. You can just use this as a prompt to get yourself writing, and you can just, write at your own blog, you can write in a notebook. Just sharing your experience helps. So I do encourage people to come along and sign up for a username and get involved in the forums.
What was that experience like the first time you wrote a story a day for the whole month of May?
It would have been a lot easier if I hadn't been an idiot. I started and I was launching this thing, and I was trying to get people interested in it, and I decided that it would be a brilliant idea to not write anything at all for a couple of weeks beforehand, just to, save all my best ideas. And don't do that. It was so stupid. I spent the whole first day paralyzed, and if I hadn't been the organizer and I didn't have all these people coming along with me, I probably would have quit there and then. So it's never a good idea to save your ideas and to not practice. There's always good ideas coming along behind whichever one you use. It will spark more creativity and more creativity. So one of the best things I got out of the challenge was to learn that creativity feeds creativity, and I had to learn it the hard way by being an idiot and not warming up and not having any ideas ready to go before I started. So don't do that.
Do you have any other war stories about what it was like, in the trenches, writing a story a day?
Some days it was easy. Some days you start with an idea and it flows and it's great, and the only struggle is trying to get the time to finish a story. But you find that you want to get back to your writing. You're thinking about your writing all day in the story and you want to finish it. But there are other times, especially in the middle, when it starts to get a little harder, when the novelty's worn off, and it's a struggle to write and to come up with a new story. And so tricks that I've learned for that, always have a list of story ideas or characters or things ready to go. Don't wait until you're sitting at your desk. And really rely on the community by the middle of the challenge. By about the 15th of May, it's getting difficult, but there are some people who are still hanging in really hard, and you need to befriend them. And write really short stories. That was the thing that I thought might feel like I was cheating. But some days, writing a Twitter story and getting that going from start to finish and completing the story is about as rewarding as anything else. When you think about writing a story a day, obviously the stories you write every day, if you're writing every day for 31 days, they're not going to be brilliant, polished works of art. They're going to be first drafts. They're going to be something that is probably going to need some work. But then you have this body of work that you can take, and you can throw away the ones that are duds. But the ones that excited you, probably a handful will excite you, and you can take them and rework them and do whatever you want with them. Writing a story a day is hard. It sort of gets harder and it sort of gets easier as the month goes on, because I think writing stories at all is hard. Writing one every day gives you a freedom that you don't have if you're only writing a story every week or every month, because you've got more invested in it. You can start this story, and if you're not loving it, just push through and something will come out of it, and you'll find something to entertain yourself. And really that's the best way to be writing anything good, I think, is you've got to find something that entertains you, something you care about. And if you just stick with the commitment and just promise to finish the story every day, you will learn something, even if you end up throwing that story away. Committing to finishing actually becomes a little easier. And I will confess that there were some days when I did not finish my stories, and it was disappointing. There's something about finishing every day that gives you a high that takes you on to the next day. So although it is hard, and some days when you sit down you don't want to start writing. I mean, really, I literally sat down some days, just put my pen on the paper and started making shapes, because that was all I could handle on the first part of the day. And that helped. And sometimes, just putting my fingers on the keyboard and doing something. I felt so stupid that I started writing a proper story. It can get difficult to come up with something new every day, but I think this is where it really is an advantage to the people who have more of a time crunch because they have a full-time job, but they are out in the world. You think that it would be idyllic to be a writer who sat at home all day, but then you're sort of just stuck, you and your computer and your desk, and that can be bad. So people who are out working or out with their kids or out walking the world, they are seeing stuff all the time. As you're walking around every day, write down 3 things that could be story sparks, but the crazy lady at the coffee shop, the bag you saw stuck in a tree, how did it get there? Why was it there? One time I wrote a story because I saw somebody, who was my husband, driving with a cup on the roof of his car. He pulled away with his coffee cup on the roof of his car, and I was like, oh, story. So I wrote the story about how, that became a thing for a detective story. You will find yourself starting to see things like that all the time, and I just encourage people to write them down when they see them.
So what things did you learn doing StoryADay about time management? Even
on the busiest days, we have a lot more time than we think we do. And I hesitate to say that because it sounds like I'm preaching and being holier than thou, but I'm not. I'm saying it is about priorities, and you will have to give something up. One day I was going to pick my kids up from school. I decided to walk, and I recorded a voice memo on my phone. And I'm not normally a verbal writer at all, and just doing it that way was A, it got it done, and B, it was a really interesting experience to see how the story came out differently. So, try different things is always another way to slot writing in when you don't think you can. 2 things that I would say I learned are to write first and write fast. If I can get up and get writing before much else has happened that day, then I have the rest of the day to be thinking about my story and my characters. Maybe if I'm driving somewhere, I can't be writing, but I've got this story in my head and I'm thinking, oh, so what happens when she's, what happens to her next? What happens to him next? Or if I'm folding laundry or, waiting for the kids or in between meetings, things like that. You find that if you've started a story in the morning, you're mulling it over during the day. And frankly, you need to probably maybe watch less television while you're in the midst of a project. But that's not to say don't watch any, because I found that during May I actually watch probably more television than I do at other times, but I make discriminating choices. And I try to watch things that are really well-told stories. And when I'm reading, I try and make sure that I'm not just mindlessly surfing blogs. I'm paring that kind of thing down. I'm paring down the instructional reading and using my time for writing, or I'm reading really inspiring short stories written by writers I love. I'm not trying to learn while I'm doing, I'm not trying to learn from other people while I'm doing. So you have to prioritize your writing time, and also accept that you can write in pockets. You don't need to sit down and have 2 hours and spend the first half hour straightening your pencils, which is very, very tempting. So that's why I like a deadline. there is a temptation to think that short stories are just for children, or they're for starting writers and writers that can't handle a novel. And a certain amount of that was why I started writing short stories again, because I couldn't conceive of handling everything that was involved in a novel. But honestly, I've always loved short stories. I love writing them, I love reading them. I think it's a really interesting discipline for a writer to be able to take characters, setting, action, motion, and distill it all down into this tiny little package, which is elegant and efficient. And I've always loved poetry. I'm not very good at writing it, so writing short stories has that. It doesn't. I don't want to say it's not bare, because you can put a lot of of detail into a short story, but it's focused, and so I think it's a great discipline. I think it's coming back. I think one of the great reasons to be writing short stories right now, there are so many markets for short stories with the digital age, with ebooks, and I'm increasingly excited. I mean, to see that a lot of novels and films and sort of any kind of creative world, a lot of traditional publishers and marketers are turning to short stories as a way for to add extras. You know, almost like DVD extras with movies. Their publishers are now going to their authors with properties, novels that they've been writing, and they're saying to them, "Do you have any, bits that you've cut out? Do you have any, scenes that you cut, anything like that we can offer to readers as extras?" And a lot of the writers are coming back with fully fledged short stories. So I think it's going to be really important for writers to keep honing those short story skills, because there's a lot of hunger from readers to get additional stories about their favorite characters, and they're happy to get them in these little packages that they can read, in between whatever else they have to do in a day.
So StoryADay sounds awesome. How do we join? Sign me up. What do I do?
Well, basically, you can just come to the site. It's storyaday.org, and there's a sign-up box right there. If you haven't taken part before, you can get yourself a username and a password and log in, and you can come into the forums, join groups, meet people. There's a newsletter as well, which runs throughout the year, and that's you can sign up for that right on the front page as well.
Well, that about wraps it up. Thank you so much for being here today, Julie. It's been great talking to you.
And thanks for having me. It's always fun to talk about short stories and what we're doing here. And I really love what you're doing over there at DIY MFA. And I'm always sending people over there to work on their craft once they've got their first drafts out of the way.
Oh, well, thank you so much. And thank you for being here.
Thank you.